The wind outside was a living thing, howling, shrieking, tearing through the trees like a predator hunting its prey. Snowflakes, thick and relentless, swirled in the darkness, bearing everything in sight. The world beyond my cabin had vanished beneath a suffocating blanket of white, the kind of storm that made you grateful for four walls and a fire. I had settled into my favorite armchair, an old wool blanket draped over my legs, a book in my hands. The fire crackled in the hearth, its warmth pushing back against the icy fingers of winter creeping through the cabin's old wooden beams. The storm had knocked out the power hours ago, leaving me with only the flickering glow of the flames to read by. It was peaceful in a way, just the sound of the wind, the occasional creak of the cabin settling, and the turning of pages. Then, I heard it. A faint, hesitant scratching at the door. At first, I dismissed it. The wind played tricks out here, rattling shutters, whistling through cracks, making branches tap against the windows like ghostly fingers. But then it came again. Scratch, scratch, pause, and then a whimper. Not the wind, not an animal rooting around in the snow. A dog. My heart lurched. I set the book down slowly, listening. Silence. Maybe I had imagined it. Maybe the storm was just scratch. Whine. A sound so pitiful, so desperate, that I was on my feet before I even realized I had moved. I crossed the room, my bare feet pressing against the cold wooden floor, and hesitated at the door. What if it was a wild animal, a coyote, a wolf? But no, that whine had been too soft, too broken. Something was out there, and it needed help. I grabbed the heavy flashlight from the counter, my fingers tightening around the cold metal. With my other hand, I turned the doorknob, pulling it open just a crack. The wind hit me like a slap, howling through the gap, carrying a flurry of snow inside. I shivered, raising the flashlight, its beam cutting through the darkness. And there, huddled on my porch, half buried in snow, was a German shepherd. His fur was matted with ice, his body trembling violently, his ribs pressed sharply against his skin, his sides heaving with shallow, panicked breaths. But the worst part, the part that made my throat tighten, was his eyes. Dark, intelligent, filled with fear, and something else. Hope. Like he had been waiting for me. Jesus Christ, I whispered. I didn't think. I dropped the flashlight, letting it thud onto the porch, and reached for him. The moment my hands touched his frozen fur, he flinched, but he didn't growl, didn't snap, just let out another weak whimper, his body sagging against mine as I lifted him. He was lighter than he should have been. Too light. Hang on, buddy, I murmured, kicking the door shut behind me. The fire's warmth wrapped around us as I carried him to the rug, lowering him gently. His legs buckled immediately, his body collapsing in exhaustion. I grabbed the nearest blanket, an old quilt my grandmother had made, and draped it over him, tucking it around his trembling frame. He didn't move, just lay there, his breath coming in short, ragged bursts. For one terrifying second, I thought I was too late. Then, his chest rose, fell, rose again, still alive. I exhaled sharply, my hands shaking as I brushed the snow from his fur. Okay, I whispered. Okay, you're gonna be okay. But as I knelt there watching over him, listening to the storm rage outside, I couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't just some lost pet. This dog hadn't stumbled upon my cabin by accident. He had come here for a reason. And whatever that reason was, it was only the beginning. The hours passed in a blur. I kept the fire roaring, piling on logs until the heat was almost unbearable. The dog, my dog now, at least for the night, lay motionless under the blanket, his breathing slowly steadying. Every few minutes I checked his pulse, his temperature, his gums, anything to reassure myself he wasn't slipping away. I heated water on the wood stove, soaking a towel in it before gently pressing it against his paws, his ears, his muzzle. The ice melted in slow drips, his fur darkening as warmth returned to his body. "Come on," I murmured, rubbing his legs to encourage circulation. "Stay with me." His tail twitched, just once, but it was enough. I let out a shaky laugh. "That's it. Fight." By the time the storm began to ease, the first hints of dawn creeping through the curtains, he was asleep. Deep, real sleep, not the shallow unconsciousness of exhaustion. His chest rose and fell steadily, his paws occasionally twitching as if he were dreaming. I slumped into the armchair, my muscles aching from hours of kneeling. The adrenaline was fading, leaving behind a bone-deep weariness. But I couldn't sleep. Not yet. Because now, in the quiet, the questions came. Where had he come from? German Shepherds didn't just appear in the middle of a blizzard. He had no collar, no tags. His coat was matted, his body scarred in places, thin, faded lines along his ribs, his shoulders, old wounds. Had he been abandoned, lost, or had he run from something? I rubbed my face, my fingers catching on stubble. The cabin was silent except for the dog's breathing and the occasional pop of the fire. The storm had passed, leaving behind a world buried in white. Then, scratch. I froze. I had to be imagining it. Scratch. Scratch. My head snapped toward the door. The dog, my dog, stirred, his ears pricking up. Another sound. A whine. Higher pitched, younger. I was on my feet before I realized it, crossing the room in 3 strides. My hand hovered over the doorknob. What if it was a trap? What if someone was out there using the dogs to lure me out? But then, another whimper. Weak, scared. I yanked the door open, and there, shivering on the porch, was a second German Shepherd. Smaller, younger, just as starved, just as frozen. This one didn't wait for me to react. It stumbled forward, collapsing against my legs with a pitiful groan. I caught it before it hit the floor, lifting it into my arms. It was lighter than the first, its fur clumped with ice, its ribs sharp beneath my fingers. The older dog let out a low rumbling sound, not a growl, but something deeper, something like recognition. I carried the second dog inside, kicking the door shut behind me. As I set it down beside the first, the older dog shifted, pressing his muzzle against the smaller one's neck. A quiet reassurance. You're safe now. And that's when I knew. These two weren't just strays. They were family. And someone had tried to tear them apart. The notebook changed everything. I found it in the shed, the one the older dog led me to the next morning, his paws crunching through the snow with single-minded determination. The shed was rotting, its roof sagging under the weight of winter. The door hung crooked on its hinges, creaking like a warning as I pushed it open. Inside, cages. 4 of them, lined up against the far wall. Rusted, stained, empty now, but not for long, if the footprints in the snow were any indication. The notebook lay on a makeshift table, its pages filled with dates, descriptions, and cold clinical notes. Subject number 12, male German Shepherd, strong, obedient, potential for resale. Subject number 13, female, 8 months, untrained, needs conditioning. My hands shook as I flipped through the pages. This wasn't just neglect. This was business. And then he appeared. A man stepping out of the trees, his face shadowed beneath a hood. "That doesn't belong to you," he said, his voice low, threatening. The dog, Hero, stepped between us, his lips peeling back in a silent snarl. The man hesitated, and that's when I knew. This wasn't over. But neither were we. Hero saved me as much as I saved him. He taught me about loyalty, real loyalty, the kind that doesn't flinch, doesn't waver, even when the world tries to break you. The authorities came, the man fled, but the scars remained on Hero's body, on the younger dog's spirit, on my own soul. We healed together, and in the end, that's what matters. Because every life deserves a second chance, even ours. Because every life matters. Taking my statement and the notebook they promised to investigate, but even as they left, I couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't over. The shepherd and the younger dog stayed with me. Their bond growing stronger each day, I named the older one Hero, because that's exactly what he was, a hero who had survived against all odds and stood by me when it mattered most. As for the man in the woods, I never saw him again, but the scars he left on those dogs and the determination they showed to survive would stay with me forever. Hero taught me something I'd never forget. Loyalty and love don't need words. Sometimes they're shown in actions, in the way a dog stands by. You protects you and reminds you of the goodness that can still be found in the darkest moments. Hero's story is a reminder of the unbreakable bond between humans and animals. His courage and loyalty changed my life forever. Ever, and I'm sure there are countless other stories like his waiting to be told. Dogs, like Hero, deserve love, care, and a chance at a better life, just like he found with me. If you believe in the power of loyalty and second chances, share this story with your friends and family.